Welcome boys and girls, Costine here with a discussion about Neferata's Ambition mod in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires and her wonderful assets in the game. But let's take a look at what this campaign has on offer, at least until Creative Assembly does actually release a Neferata DLC, which they've hinted at. So, looking at this campaign, you start in the Silver Pinnacle, as is all well and good, and you do have a vampire landmark. This basically allows you to recruit vampires, hero recruit rank, recruitment cost, recruit rank for Lamian Handmaidens, which are a unit as part of this mod. The uniqueness of this particular campaign, well, I would say it's kind of like playing Vlad and Isabella's campaign, though somewhat better in a way. If we look at the climate situation, you do have wasteland, you do have mountain, you do have temperate. So a lot of the territory on the campaign map, from the Empire to Cafe, with everything in between, is suitable for you, with the exception of a couple of magical forests, of course. All the same, you do have a lot of campaign flexibility, and your victory conditions also give you a good amount of campaign flexibility, though you probably will want to play a campaign similar to Vlad, where you're kind of conquering the Empire through diplomacy or military action, though. Unlike Vlad, you actually don't have to wipe out Karl Franz, so you can just make him a vassal. In this particular case, I've made Elspeth a vassal, because why not? It's hilarious. That's one of the powers of the vampire counts. If we look at faction effects, we start with 2 blood kisses, we get hero recruitment vampires, hero action success chance for vampires, hero capacity, hero recruitment cost for reduced by 20%, and a 60 diplomacy benefit for basically human factions, as well as Lamian influence. Lamian influence being a resource over here that you can use for various things in the secret market, but we'll get into that in just a moment. One of the better things about playing Neferata's Ambition mod is the fact that you do have Slaaneshi Seductive influence in this campaign. So if you engage in diplomacy with human factions, but not just human factions, dwarven factions as well, or a whole bunch of different factions, you can use seductive influence, Lamian seductive influence, to dominate a faction. That's where Lamian influence comes in. So seductive influence is on a faction by faction basis. Lamian influence is a faction-wide resource, which you can use to either acquire certain imperial units, including mortars, just for some siege capability. We're missing cannons and hellstorms and all that, but you can always use allied recruitment for that particular purpose. The mod hasn't really been updated for a while, though it is compatible with the latest version. Like, it's compatible with the Siege beta that is available right now until just a bit later today in the Proving Grounds. So the main thing is you have a combination of Slaaneshi mechanics with the inherent benefits of Vampire Counts mechanics. So blood kisses, bloodlines, you name it, you can have it in this campaign. Now, further pushing the whole combination of Vampire Counts and Slaanesh, you also have cults. You actually start with a Lamian vampire in the Empire, and my perspective in general on hero actions on the campaign map is usually it's not worth doing. But given the kind of benefits you can get and the kind of benefits you have with respect to hero actions, it's actually a very viable strategy to use this hero to do assassinations, set up cults. Like, this is the one campaign in a very long time where I've actually used heroes for more than just combat power. So you do have these cults for Lamian influence and vampiric influence, and for the settlement owner, Lamian influence income, vampiric corruption, or raise dead cost and recruit rank. Personally, I think that the hidden library is probably what you want to go for every single time, just because of the benefits over there, but you do at least have a couple of choices. Could use an update, undeniably so, but it does get the job done. So it is fun from the perspective that you can do vassalizations through more than just diplomacy, like, oh, let me region trade to a certain faction and vassalize them from that. Yes. To be clear, that is precisely how I got both Thorgrim and Ungrim as my vassals in this campaign. Yes, I vassalized the dwarves, and now I'm at war with Azag in this campaign. it does kind of create a situation where your best path is always to do the same thing, which is like take your initial province, go for the World Edge Archway, take out Skarsnik, and then vassalize both Thorgrim and Ungrim if you can, and then conquer Zufbar and go on a war against Vlad. One of the things that I think is limiting is the fact that you can't really achieve easy confederation. So maybe you would want to play this campaign with the Recruit Defeated Legendary Lords mod, so that you can fight Vlad, kill him, take his stuff, and then still get Vlad and Isabella in your campaign. Because that kind of diplomacy benefit that you do have in your campaign through faction effects, it's gonna stack with Vlad's skill line that gives you a diplomacy benefit to humans, and then you also have the Lamian vampire bloodline that also gives you a further benefit in terms of diplomacy with humans. This is a ridiculous level of diplomatic benefits, because it means the aversion is not just negated, but you're at a significant diplomatic benefit with human factions in your campaign, though managing that effectively can cause its own issues. But still, it does work, it does get the job done in a campaign, and it is pretty fun. Now, looking back to Neferata's watermelon, or her assets, really watermelons, but really looking at her assets, her skill line and items, we do have a Lamian vampire skill line, so we get Deathly Vigor, bonuses to infantry, Seduction as a skill to reduce enemy melee attack and speed, and then at level 23 we get more stuff. Some really powerful stuff. Hero recruit capacity for vampires, vampire corruption, melee attack for embedded vampire heroes, and defense. Jeez, this is extremely powerful as a skill line. Might be a benefit to actually play Isabella and then confederate her, because the sheer level of bullshit power that you have over here is crazy. Battle healing cap, and then physical resistance. The one issue I have with this is that it takes until rank 23 in order to get access to the full asset line for Neferata. Anyway, you do also get free items, different items. So we get the Ruby of Lamian, when recovery time. We get a weapon that gives you poison attacks, base weapon damage, armor piercing weapon damage, physical resistance. And then we have a staff, wins a magic cost, all that. But the level requirement is pretty high. One of the things that's kind of shame that's missing is, like, yeah, we got the Bard, the Nightmare, Hellsteed, but we don't really have her special end times mount. So if we look at the Bard, the Nightmare, it's just a freaking regular horse. Well, I wish Vlad had a horse, to be clear on that. But still, it's just a regular vampire mount with regards to what Neferata does have. But huge amount of diplomatic capability. You can easily build up relationships with these kind of human factions. So for instance, any kind of military Axis pact, non-aggression pact is going to add a lot. Like if I wanted Ostland over here, I can easily gain control over them. And that applies to Kislev, that applies to Cathay. But I do believe you need to be stronger than the faction you're trying to do selective influence on. Or you can just do it through regular diplomacy, because, you know, vassal agreements through regular diplomacy. I would just need some territory over here, so maybe I should try and get my hands on Talabekland right here in order to really pull that off. But yeah, probably recommended would recruit the Defeated Legendary Lords mod. Now, beyond that, what else do we get for Neferata? Well, we get Battle Healing Cap for Lamian Handmaidens, melee attack, and melee defense for embedded Lamian Handmaidens, which are a unit, not a hero. Speaking though about the Lamian vampires, they're weaker than the regular vampires. So if we look at Lamian vampire, Lamian vampires are going to have a combination of Lore of Vampires and Lore of Shadows spells. Pretty solid, makes sense. But the actual stats that they have less armor. And while they do have bonuses versus infantry compared to regular vampires, yeah, that lack of armor can hurt you a bit in respect to a campaign. On top of that, we do have the same issues with research that the regular vampire accounts have, like the research tree is very outdated, but then we get some extra research. That, personally, I feel it's complete fluff, because, 5 diplomatic relationship, but you spend Lamian influence for these kind of benefits, and it takes a long time. Maybe this is just a tooltip issue in the research tree. Maybe these things can be researched faster. I'm not sure. But regardless, you do get some benefits for human for the human units, like upkeep benefits. But yeah, the research situation doesn't necessarily feel that great. With the exception of like the Trader's Fury, like yeah, just getting +5 melee attack, melee defense for things like Graveguard is pretty strong. Having human units is useful, but there's more to it than just the units that you can get through the Sisterhood Sacred Market. So in the Sisterhood Sacred Market, you can get these kind of human units, baseline Empire units. Shame we don't have artillery, but we can get outriders and pistoliers, even some mortars for siege attacker. We also can craft some items. So think of it like the Tomb King situation, because I'm pretty sure that's what it's based on. That makes sense given the fact that Neferata is part of the Tomb Kings, or technically speaking, she is a Tomb King, kind of. It's a bit of a complicated lore situation, but yes, we do have an item shop where we can craft things, which is useful if you're going to be running around with a lot of vampires, though certainly could use an update. Now, in terms of more things, more fun things in this campaign, we do get some extra units and heroes. Like, already you have the Lamian Vampire, but we also get Corrupted Captains. Now, Corrupted Captains, they can be very useful to buff those human units, so they can buff Great Swords if you want to use that. I think that's probably useful if you're going to get one of these. They can also give you reload time and all that, but yeah, the kind of human units we do have over here are just not going to be worth it from my perspective, though you can get some Corrupted Captains. They don't have a Pegasus, unfortunately, but they do have a melee skill line, even if they're lacking in certain skills. And this one is, and they generate Lamian influence. But in terms of recruiting these guys, you can recruit and increase capacity at tier 3. Unfortunately, you can only do so in provincial capitals. So that is a limiting factor over there with regards to corrupted captains. Outside of that, we do have the ability of getting some unique units. So if I look at the unit and spell browser over here, maybe not, actually not. Okay, fair enough, it's not going to show up there. Why would I expect that? But we do get the ability of recruiting from Silver Pinnacle and other places. I think we can get in other places, but we can get Fallen Lamian Archers, Fallen Lamian Spears, and Fallen Lamian Warriors. These are just basically better Skeletal Warriors. Think of like the Skeletal Warriors and Skeletal Archers that the Tomb Kings have. That's kind of what you're going to get here. Unfortunately, they're limited in terms of unit capacity because, of course, they're limited in unit capacity. Modders do love to make things annoying, don't they? Anyway, but you can increase the unit caps. Again, you can only do so in provincial capitals, so you can't really pull this off in minor settlements, unfortunately, on that subject. Personally, I wouldn't care too much about it. The human units can be useful because they do have, and the corrupted captain can be useful because they don't disintegrate. But yeah, these kind of units, not really that worth investing into, especially when you do need to spend the building slot at tier 2 and tier 3 in order to get it done. For what it is worth, at least you can get a decent amount of unit capacity at tier 2 and tier 3 for these guys, but I just don't necessarily think they're worth it. The only ones I've been using in this campaign are the ones that I pretty much start with, or the ones I can get very early on. Beyond that, we do have Lamian Handmaidens and Lamian Handmaidens with longsword. So at tier 3, through Silver Pinnacle, we can get Lamian Handmaidens and longswords at tier 5. Otherwise, you can recruit them for the Vampiric Crypts at tier 4 and 5. Now, what are these units? Well, they're basically Lamian vampires, so the hero version, but with 3 models, scaled down, if you will, for that purpose. They're missing the hunger, which is obviously unfortunate, but they do have a good amount of armor-piercing damage, base weapon damage, and they also have the bleed attack. So they're pretty strong, pretty capable. Unfortunately, without the hunger and disintegration being what it is, for vampires, and they are vampires, that can be a bit of an issue. Lamian Handmaids longswords, they do have bonus versus large, so they do lose the bonus versus infantry, but otherwise they're the same unit. They can be really good for flank protection or dealing with large single entities because of that bonus versus large. I don't think they should be a tier 5 unit, but that is my perspective on a lot of things. It's kind of like the Ice Guard situation that Kislev had, and yeah, that was not necessarily the greatest decision by Creative Assembly. Like, oh, here's the same unit with a different weapon. Let's put it on a higher tier than you would otherwise get. Overall, though, I think the campaign is really solid. I think it can be a good amount of fun right now. It's kind of like a better version in some ways than Vlad and Isabella's campaign, which is, from my perspective, already the best Vampire Counts campaign. Wish the mod was updated, but I guess we're just gonna have to wait for Creative Assembly to actually release a DLC for Neferata. Though I think it is a good baseline for them to maybe learn some lessons from. You also do get a special vampire hero over here with Naima. She's just basically a vampire hero with a Lamian vampire hero with the lore of magic, hunger, hellsteed, all that kind of stuff. So that is what you're going to get with respect to her. Like Lamian vampires, like they're said to be stronger, and yes, there is some benefit with them from a combat perspective, or at least with Naima. There is a bit of a benefit, but yeah, I think having that lower level of armor is just not necessarily worth it. But you're gonna do more hero actions. You're gonna be engaged in at least doing something on the campaign map with at least one initial hero. I think it's a great idea to have a situation in a campaign where you have your starting position, but then you have heroes further away, or one hero. So she basically started in Stirland right here by kneeling. It's a great idea to have a hero starting reasonably far away from where you're starting, from your starting position. That means heroes can be useful. They can do various things. They can level up, and they can be a genuine benefit. Depends on the heroes, depends on the campaign, but I think it's maybe something Creative Assembly should take note of, because we barely ever use heroes for the sake of campaign effects, as opposed to using them for battle situations, because that's always going to be the decision. Do I use a hero in battle? They can be very strong, they can have a significant impact, or do I use them for various campaign effects? That's my perspective. Anyway, that's all I had to say. Christine signing out. Pretty solid mod. Check it out.